I don't think Miami's getting pushed by Virginia Tech today. Are they getting pushed by anyone on their schedule?
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest, most holiest sport on planet Earth. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We'll pick every game in the ACC, and I've got plenty of thoughts on the messy NIL situation in Las Vegas. But Alex Donno, Locked On Canes. We're starting with Miami today. They've got Virginia Tech, a game that I had kind of penciled in as a potential upset pick, even though it's in Coral Gables. In no way, shape, or form do I think that that is going to transpire. And I don't even know if Virginia Tech, with the way they have played to start this season, losses to Vanderbilt and Rutgers, they're one of the most disappointing teams in college football to me. I don't think they can hang with Miami here, do you?
I've learned enough lessons this season, like when NIU goes up against Notre Dame, for example, that you never say never in college football, Spencer. And to Virginia Tech's credit, I believe that they are capable of more based on their talent. And I'm very, or at least I was very high on Kyron Drones. I'm pretty disappointed with his inconsistency so far because the Virginia Tech offense doesn't seem to wake up until the second half, usually the fourth quarter. They cannot afford to fall behind on the road at Miami on a Friday night. That's gonna avalanche very, very badly for them. So, yeah, listen, based on what we've seen, 4 games from each side, you can understand why Miami is getting close to being a 3-touchdown favorite in this game because the Hurricanes have executed even higher than their expectations to this point, specifically Cam Ward, who's been money, and Virginia Tech has been under just about every expectation. They've been very poor, have the Hokies against the run this year. They're 101st in the country in stopping the run. Significantly better against the pass, but something's got to give. When a team figures out they can run on you, they don't have to throw as much. Virginia Tech is 28th against the pass so far this year. As my co-host on Locked On ACC, Kenton Gibbs, was saying heading into the season, his biggest area of concern for the Hokies was their lack of size up front, and it's playing out that way with them having trouble stopping the run. Also, their linebacker play to me has looked poorer than I've expected so far. In terms of what Virginia Tech can do well, Bishal Tutin, their top running back, is a really good player. He's already pushing in on 400 yards rushing to this point. He's got 7 touchdown runs. And, Kyron Drones, if he can start playing to, his top moments from last season, he can be a legitimate dual threat quarterback. We haven't seen it enough this year. He does run very well. And, Miami faced a quarterback at USF last week with similar characteristics, not as talented as Kyron Drones and Byron Brown. But a big difference is Kyron Drones is the size of a linebacker. This dude's 235 pounds. So if he gets going, he's a really, really tough man to take down. And he's deceptively fast. And then kind of an interesting angle about this game, Spencer. And, the two of these guys are not going to be on the field at the same time. But Miami's Cam Ward and Virginia Tech's Kyron Drones, they're cousins, and they're very close. So I'm sure there's going to be some
I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't know it until ACC Media Days when we had a chance to talk to them both. And apparently they didn't actually realize that they were cousins until they were both in high school. They were able to connect somehow. They work with the same quarterback coach. So you got the family affair.
You learn something new every day.
Right? Yeah, so that's crazy. So but in terms of Miami, the offense has been absolutely rolling so far for the Hurricanes. Ward leads the nation in touchdown passes. I do think there are some interesting matchups with Virginia Tech's secondary. They've got some size back there and some speed. Miami does have, actually, according to Pro Football Focus, the most productive receiver core in the country right now, led by Xavier Restrepo, and Isaiah Horton has been excellent the past couple of games. So, honestly, logically, there's no reason why Miami should struggle, but sometimes you throw logic out the window with college football. And this, Mario Cristobal said it, and I tend to agree that this is probably the toughest test Miami will have faced so far, because they're not exactly playing an SEC schedule this year, Spencer.
No, they certainly are not. And I think Cam Ward has been phenomenal. That's not a hot take or breaking news to anyone that's followed college football this year. Somehow, I think he's even stepped up more than I thought he would going to Miami's offense. That you think about running the football, you got Damian Martinez, you got the offensive line, but Cam Ward has really been the star. And if you have that with everything else Miami has, I look at the rest of this Canes schedule, Donno, and I'll give my prediction here real quick. I think Miami wins this football game. I think it's 42-20. I think they get up pretty big, at least by midway through the third quarter, if not sooner. It took them a while to pull away from South Florida, but then they won the game 50-15. But I just have no indication from Virginia Tech, and this is why college football is great, because sometimes you show life when you don't expect it, and that's why you play the games on the field, not on paper. And so I think Virginia Tech is yet to give me a reason to feel confident in them that they can cover the point spread here, which, depending on where you look, it is around 20 points or so. I think the Canes win. I'll go 45-20.
Yeah, I mean, Miami has scored the lowest point total they've had so far this year was 41 points against Florida, and that was with taking their foot off the gas a little bit in that game. They're actually averaging about 52, I think it's 52.5 points per game so far this season. And again, not against the toughest competition in the country. But then the problem is, I'm not sure if Virginia Tech is the toughest competition in the country either. Like they're probably better than USF, but I don't know how much better Virginia Tech is.
Are they better than Florida? USF. I don't really know, because Florida won big against Mississippi State, who granted is pretty dreadful this year. But I mean, how much better would Virginia Tech play if they went to Starkville to play the Bulldog? Like, I don't really know. Our friends at FanDuel, by the way, have this line at 17.5. It's a big number to swallow, but Miami's at home. I'd probably swallow it if I were a gambling man, Alex. But I do want to shift for the rest of the segment. We'll get to our ACC picks across the conference in a little bit. But when you look at this Miami schedule, who can challenge the Hurricanes? Like, who's the biggest threat to beat Miami in the regular season right now?
Louisville on the road in October. They haven't faced the toughest of competition either. They did just get a good conference win for the resume against Georgia Tech. Now, There was some self-destruction on Georgia Tech's side, though. They had a 4th and goal that they really should have converted. They gave up a defensive and a special teams touchdown, but Louisville had to make those plays, and they're ranked, they're undefeated for a reason. Miami has to go on the road and play them. That far and away looks like the toughest game remaining on Miami's schedule. Miami has, of course, Florida State on the schedule the following week. That's at home this year. Florida State has, been probably the biggest disappointment in the country, the way that they've actually played versus their expectations heading into the year. But it is a rivalry game, and if Florida State can figure something out over the next few weeks, that one may be closer than we thought it was going to be within the last couple of weeks. Miami has I don't know what Cal is anymore, because the same Cal team that can go into Auburn with Jordan Hare and outplay, really embarrass
Donno,
Auburn.
You're speaking the language of Bears fans right there. I don't know what Cal is. Nobody knows. As someone who's got some experience there, I'll tell you, they will play up to whoever they are going against, and they can play down to whoever they're playing against. It doesn't matter. I think it's 4 times now that they've lost to a winless football team that is at least 0-3 in the Justin Wilcox era, and yet they went to Jordan Hare and beat Auburn. So that's one game prediction, but there are a bunch of other games in the ACC. And speaking of Louisville, they could ruin Notre Dame's playoff season. That's coming up next. First, let's talk about Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. That's Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Notre Dame has to win or they're not going to the playoff. I think it's that simple thanks to their loss to Northern Illinois. Alex Donno, Locked On Canes, still with me here on Locked On College Football. Irish favored by 6.5 points against Louisville at home. I like Jeff Brom. I think he is one of the best head coaches in college football. I don't think you could give me 15 that I'd say decisively are better than Jeff Brom. Look at what Purdue has become since he left. Look at what Louisville has been since he arrived. Notre Dame appeared to have found their footing last week against the aforementioned Boilermakers. Got the big win. It was, 66-7. Like, ever since the NIU game, they've looked better, but do they beat Louisville here? They're favored by 6.5 according to our friends at FanDuel.
I think Louisville pulls off the upset. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because, like, I respect South Bend as a very tough road environment. But the thing is,
Northern Illinois disagrees.
That's fair. That is fair. And when Marshall beat them a couple years ago, was that also in South Bend?
It was. It was. Okay. Though Miami of Ohio, not your Miami, different Miami, they went in there last week, lost 28-3. So Notre Dame's given up 10 points in the last 2 weeks. Like, have they solved it enough?
Here's the thing, like, this to me, it's going to come down, and we talked about this on our episode of the squad in the ACC yesterday. This is really getting Notre Dame's rushing offense against Louisville's excellent rushing defense, that if Louisville can hold strong, I think they have enough to win this football game, because their quarterback, and you mentioned how much we respect Jeff Brom. The guy is a legitimate quarterback whisperer. Like, he was able to make Jack Plummer serviceable in enough games to get to the ACC.
They got him to the ACC title game.
Got them to the ACC title game, and Jack Plummer was awful. I'm sorry. And you know what? Tyler Shuck has been the opposite of that. Like, you know, the knock on him is he's never been able to stay healthy. Well, as far as I know, he's not on the injury report for the game against Notre Dame this Saturday. Like, Louisville, to me, and now, if Notre Dame hadn't slipped on that banana peel against NIU, would I probably be picking them in this game? Yeah, maybe they learn from that, so it won't happen again. But I think Louisville's going to get in there and get it and grind out a close win. And then, you know, the negativity around Notre Dame 2 weeks later, I think it's going to resurface.
I think the last 2 games for Notre Dame have showed me that the NIU game has heightened their focus. So I think Notre Dame, I'm picking Notre Dame to win the game because they are at home, and I think there's going to be an extra level of motivation of, hey, we're not putting our fans through that again this week. Playoff hopes on the line. I would not take them to cover the 6.5 though. I'll take Notre Dame to win in a close one, 28-24 over the Cardinals. Let's go rapid fire around the ACC. Some really interesting games this week, including the biggest threat to Miami to win the conference championship. That's Clemson. They take on Stanford at home, favored by 22.5. I think I like the Cardinal to cover, but definitely not pulling the upset here. Stanford's an improved team. I thought they would be. They are not on Clemson's level. The Tigers are rolling. I'll take Clemson 38-20.
I think Clemson might cover. You know, I think Syracuse was really, really off in that Stanford game, and I think if Clemson is actually smart enough to realize Alec Iomanner is really the only guy in this offense that can beat us.
I still think about that fourth down in the Syracuse game. Like, where did you think the football was going?
They rush 3, they drop 8 into coverage, and somehow those 8 guys in coverage, only one of them was on Alec Iomanner, which made absolutely no sense whatsoever. You know, listen, we already, we saw that Clemson is not on Georgia's level, which shouldn't surprise too many people. But I think I think the Tigers, if this game wasn't in Death Valley, I would say Stanford. If it was in Stanford, maybe they can keep it within 2 touchdowns. I think Clemson's actually gonna win and cover. I'm gonna go like 42-17. I think Clemson's gonna win big at home.
Couple of G5 matchups for ACC teams looking for a win. Now, Boston College is off to a strong start this year. They've got the win against Michigan State. They're favored by 12.5 against Western Kentucky. NC State, though, just a 6.5-point home favorite against NIU. Wolfpack need a win bad here, Donno. I think Boston College will be just fine. I'm worried about NC State in this game.
Yeah, I'm going to take Boston College to cover. I think Boston College is one of the more underrated teams in the country. I didn't think they should have been unranked after a really close loss at Mizzou. They won their following game. I think Boston College should be in the top 25, maybe can get back there. So I agree on that one. With NC State, I don't know if they cover or win against NIU, because here's the thing.
We're talking about disappointing teams in the ACC. Tech, NC State are just top of the list.
And NC State, it's like they're kind of already playing for next year, with CJ Bailey at quarterback. And then of course, when they started the season with Grayson McCall, that was I know that they had high hopes for him coming over in the transfer portal, but he was just dreadful. Maybe NC State comes away with a 3-point win. They might win. I don't think they'll cover.
I'm going to take the upset here. I'm taking the upset. Give me NIU. I have nothing. I don't have defense. I don't have offense. I don't have clear identity. I got nothing to feel good about with NC State. So give me NIU to get their second Power 4 win of the year. Before we get to Duke, North Carolina, and SMU, FSU. Wake Forest minus 3.5 against Louisiana. Talk about a primetime upset alert. I do think the Demon Deacons get it done at home. I think it's close. That could be a field goal game. I'll go a slight cover. 23-17. I think Wake Forest wins. Syracuse minus 28.5 against Holy Cross. Holy Cross, good FCS program. Yeah. Not going to be on Syracuse's level. They could cover, but coin flip on who covers in that one. But Wake Forest, man, look out.
Oh man, I don't have full faith in Hank Bachmeier or really anything on Wake Forest. So I'm gonna say that's upset alert. I think they might lose that game. I agree with you on Syracuse is going to win, but 28.5 even against Holy Cross. Holy Cross has not been good this year though, but 28.5 is a big number. You know what? I'll say that they're going to cover only because they're going to be extra motivated to score a lot after losing at home to Stanford last week. I think if they had beaten Stanford, they wouldn't put their lead foot so much on the gas this week. But I think Syracuse is going to try to win this game big, and they will.
I like that pick. My favorite ACC line of the week, give me Duke minus 2.5 at home against North Carolina. Tar Heels have got no defense. Malik Murphy's playing really nice football. Manny Diaz is 4-0. Did you know that? Anyone listening to or watching the show? Duke is 4-0. Give me 5-0 for the Blue Devils in a rivalry game at home. They lost this one in a thriller in Chapel Hill a year ago. I think they win in front of the home fan. I think they do it pretty comfortably. 30-13. Give me Duke.
Yeah, I'm not going to relatively comfortably. I say Duke is going to win by 7 and cover the spread at home, because it's like, how can I in good faith pick a North Carolina team that not only doesn't have a defense, they don't really have a quarterback. They turned it over how many times last week when they let James Madison score 70 points on them. So how can I pick North Carolina against Duke when they gave up 70 points last week? And listen, Duke has not played a tough schedule so far, but that doesn't change this week. North Carolina is not a tough opponent this year. They don't have, the last several years, they've had first-round NFL quarterbacks on their team. That is not the case this year. I've got the Blue Devils. I think Malik Murphy's going to have a really nice game. And against that defense, why not?
Finally, Donno, SMU, 6.5-point favorite against Florida State. Look, I was disappointed with SMU at the start. I don't like either of these teams, frankly. I don't love it. Don't love it. I don't know. What's your read on this game?
So here's my read. Despite the fact that, SMU, they did score, I think it was 66 points they scored against TCU last week. I think SMU is going to win a low-scoring, ugly game. So I'm looking at, it's already a pretty low over-under at 48.5, but I think it's going to go under that for the simple reason that Florida State's defensive line has woken up the last 2 weeks. They're starting to resemble the defensive line that was, supposedly best in the country before the season started. Like they're closer to that now than they were to worst defensive line, which is how they looked the first couple of weeks. So I think Florida State's defense is going to make things a little bit muddy for SMU. I know Kevin Jennings has played well at quarterback now since they bench Preston Stone, but I think Florida State's defense is going to be able to keep this one low scoring. But the problem is Florida State can't score.
No, I can't watch their offense. I can't. It's just so painful.
I mean, it's so inept. They can't run the football. DJ Uyunglele can't hit fades wide open in the end zone. So this is going to be a game where, I think SMU's probably going to win, by a field goal, something like that. But I think it's going to be a muddy, ugly game, and I would be surprised if it goes over 48.5. So I'm going to pick SMU ugly, and this is not going to be one that's it is in prime time, this one, ACC Network at 8 p.m. Eastern time, but it's not going to be the most exciting use of our evening hours on Saturday.
18-16, weird score. Give me SMU. 18-16. The UNLV debacle, and it's a debacle, and it's not good for college football. That's coming up next. First, let's talk about FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, guess what? You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And if you want college football action, let me assure you that FanDuel, they've got you covered. Every game, every line, every over-under, every money line, everything you want is over at FanDuel. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Whatever game I've predicted on today's show, if you think I'm off my rocker, you can go bet the other side at FanDuel.com. If you think I'm the sharpest individual known to man, thank you so much. You can go to FanDuel.com. Everything you want is over there. Bet whatever you'd like. FanDuel.com. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. What has happened to the game we love? That's what a lot of fans ask themselves regularly. Realignment, portal, NIL. And I think there's a general pushback that can take place online, amongst pundits, amongst fans. I hear these conversations play out in person with college football fans all over the country. What has happened to the game I love? And the pushback is, you got to adapt to the times. You got to do that. You're just scared of player empowerment. I hate that pushback. It's lazy. It's lazy because there is no world in which a fan of any team should just accept and be okay with a quarterback or a player opting out of a season right smack dab in the middle of it. UNLV is a bona fide college football playoff contender. Do you understand that? Do you understand that they can make the college football playoff? One of the many things, of which there are others, that separate college football from the NFL, but one of them has always been, you didn't have contract holdouts. You didn't have contract disputes where you roll your eyes and say, players, agents, ownership, figure it out, get together. You didn't have that in college football because fundamentally, college football was played for the love of the game and for the love of the school. And that is what sucks in a lot of fans across the country. And these sorts of stories drive people away. I am not standing here on a podium, metaphorically, of course, because I'm sitting in a chair with a microphone in front of me, but you get the idea. I am not sitting here saying that college football is going to die, that college football is just a complete mess. Well, in a lot of ways, it is a big time mess. I'm not saying that college football is destined to fail, but these issues need to be resolved. Because the number one group of people who I'm always concerned with and always have been in my comments in the past and opinions when it comes to realignment in the portal and anything else, fans make sports great. Think back to COVID. Not a very fun time in the world. In the sports world, it really stunk stunk as a television product. It was better than nothing, because when there was nothing on TV, when we were just watching replays, man, that was bad. But when you were watching games on TV and the announcers were delayed and there was no crowd, was it as much fun to watch? Did you feel the energy? Did you feel the juice? No. So I always think about college football fans first. And there's no way you can look at this UNLV situation and say, this is good for college football, this is good for fans. Or you got Bear Alexander over at USC opting out for the rest of the season. This stuff stinks. It stinks. UNLV is a legitimate Mountain West Conference title contender. That fan base has been yearning, waiting. I don't think it's the biggest fan base in college football, maybe because they haven't won in forever. They've been terrible. And last year they're good, and they are more than fulfilling their expectations in the early part of this year, and their quarterback just says, oh, I'm done. I'm done. I'm out. You know what that tells me? Quarterback wasn't actually in it for the love of the school. I don't hold that against him. But he was not in it for the love of the school. He was in it because he wanted to get a check. Because someone is in his ear, some agent who wasn't actually registered in the state of Nevada. I can't believe. I'm shocked, I tell you, that the NCAA unleashing NIL and not creating any regulations and guidelines that allows for licensed agents to move into the space is going awry. I can't believe it. This is the equivalent. A lot of people, I don't know if everyone understands this. Being a sports agent is a licensed practice, like being a lawyer or being a real estate agent. Anyone cannot sell you a house. There is a board, there are certifications, there are regulations that you have to go through to ensure situations like this don't happen. So for those who don't know, I should have explained this earlier, I apologize. But Matthew Sluka was a starting quarterback for UNLV. Because he's opted out for this season. Because there were disagreements about how much NIL money he was going to receive. The reporting that I have seen, and there are a couple different people who have sounded off, you can read whichever reporter you would like, but my understanding of the situation is he was promised a certain amount of NIL, and then he wanted more because of how UNLV was performing to start the year. UNLV is not willing to grant that because that's not how Barry Odom rolls. And then he decided, okay, well, then I'm not going to play. And now he's going to hit the transfer portal. He'll go somewhere in the offseason and he'll get a bigger NIL deal. That's not what college sports is fundamentally supposed to be about. I am in favor of players being able to profit off of their name, image, and likeness. This situation needs to be eradicated from the sport. I don't care who's responsible. I don't care who benefit. I don't care. This sort of stuff stinks. Bear Alexander, legit contributor on USC's defense this year. Not as important as Matthew Sluka. Oh, by the way, UNLV also lost their starting running back. Not as big a contributor, but certainly a name that people are aware of, and they're just jumping ship as we're getting into the heart of the college football season. Next time you hear a fan push back on the notion that you're just opposed to player empowerment, explain to me how college football fans are supposed to feel when the players that they are supporting, that they are cheering for, who wear their school's jersey, whose NIL deals they might even pay for if they're a donor or whoever. How are they supposed to feel if the player says, "No, I'm good. I don't want to play. I'm opting out of the rest of the year." And this is not a nothing program or a nothing school. You've got money being promised and then not delivered upon. It's almost like it's an unregulated wasteland of NIL. It's a complete and utter shame is what it is. It's a shame that Matthew Sluka thought he was going to get more money than he did. It's a shame that money was promised and then not delivered upon. It's a shame that he has the mindset at all of, I'm not playing for this team until I get more money. That's a shame. It's a shame for college football. And there are plenty of different parties that can be blamed. Here's the problem. Who's fixing this? The NCAA? Okay. Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it, because it's not going to happen. Are schools going to fix this? Can players fit? The NCAA would be the ideal organization to solve these sorts of matters and to prevent players from opting out and have actual binding contracts. It's why whenever I heard, well, now you've got free agency in college football. No, you have something much more powerful for the players than free agency. The player empowerment pendulum, if you believe it was swung too far in the direction of teams and organizations and universities in the past, it has swung too far in the other direction now for the players. Because you don't even have this level of freedom in professional sports. You can't just stop playing in the middle of the year. You can't, that doesn't happen. You sign a contract, you show up to play unless you are not medically able to do so, or if you're Ben Simmons. So I think this whole thing stinks and hope they're able to get rid of it. I just don't have any faith that it's going to be rectified. I really don't. Because I don't know what rule is going to come about. Would Congress get involved? How many of you trust the United States Congress to figure all these things out? I'm sure that'd be a bipartisan issue because everybody loves college football. There are plenty of big-time college grads in the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives and people that love football, and they have constituents, fans, who love football and want this stuff to get figured out. Maybe that's the best vehicle. But if that's the best entity that can solve this problem and prevent further mid-season opt-outs on teams that are going to push for a conference title or a championship, man, that stinks. It stinks. I hope this doesn't permeate to the rest of college sports. I hope that other NIL collectives are run better and have stronger arrangements and better understood arrangements with their players so that you don't see this continue to escalate. But the last time we started seeing opt-outs was during bowl games. How many kids opt out of bowl games now? Kind of a dark note to end today's show on, but I hope this doesn't cycle. I'm hoping, but I'm not optimistic. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.